and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Andrei Negrau. Andrei, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
Of course. So, if you could, can you start us out with your upbringing? Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
I grew up in Romania in a small city called Oradea. It's in on the western part of Romania. Grew up in the average family in the 1990s, um, and I didn't grow up with a lot of resources. So I think from an early age, I developed a sense of just doing things on my own, because there was no other way around if I wanted something. So
Yeah,
I think it's still true today.
for sure. What did your parents do growing up? I'm curious if they had an influence on some of the stuff you're doing today.
Um, so they worked. My mom is an accountant,
Okay,
and my dad used to manage like a retail store.
awesome.
So yeah, I was I didn't really like spend that much time. Like we didn't talk much about work at home,
Yeah,
and it was pretty normal life in that respect.
for sure. What were some of your interests growing up and aspirations? Say at like a young age in your teen years, did you have any aspirations of what you wanted to do, and how did that change?
Right. So I remember when I was like, as early as I can remember, maybe I was 3 or 4. And I always loved cars, and I still love cars and motorcycles and planes and all these kind of toys. But I was every time I was getting like a new toy, like a remote control car, the first thing that I was doing, not I was not playing with it, but I was basically disassembling it. So I was trying to understand, how does it work? How does the remote control work? What's inside a car? What kind of batteries? What kind of motors are in the car? So ever since I was a kid, I loved just like deconstructing technology and understanding how it works, and then
Yeah,
obviously putting it back together and make it work again. And I was fortunate enough to get it. I got my hands on a computer when I was like 4, and I was one of the first kids in Romania to get a computer, and it was incredible.
wow.
Thanks to that, I was able to, like I was able to use the internet when it came out, and I was playing games, and I really got to learn a lot of the early. I got to experience a lot of the early internet when I was like super young, and
Mhm.
that was important for me. And then when I grew up, when I was maybe like 13 or 14, just
Yeah,
because as I said, like I knew that I have to do things on my own, in my own way, and if I want to sustain, like if I want to get something, I
yeah,
better do it on my own. Like I cannot just ask someone to help me with it. So at that point, I was like 13. It was 2000 and something. And think about it like eBay. What this was happening in Romania at that time. It was
yeah,
just super popular, came out. And because I had access to the internet, and because I was spending all this time, different forums and communities back in the days,
mhm.
I quickly started to see opportunities to sell things online. So I actually started selling things on this marketplace
Hmm.
back when I was like 13. It was crazy.
Wow.
And I was making like a really nice side income, um,
Mhm.
while I was like a kid, and I could, legally I couldn't do this, so I had to, find hacks and workarounds. But
Yeah,
it was super great, and this was my first experience with e-commerce. Obviously, there was no e-commerce per se, but
yeah,
that's when I started selling things online. And with that, I got myself a little bit of leeway, so I got to do things that I really enjoyed, and that was building. So I was coding, I was creating music, I produced music for a number of years. i
wow.
i guess I always like to produce things, like be it like a physical object, or
Yeah,
like a software, or like music, because even music producing, even these days, it's actually very similar to writing code. You have to understand tools, how they work. And I
yeah,
got super hooked on that. And yeah, I spent a few years just doing that, until I realized, well, I definitely need to, do something here, because just music producing, unless you're that 0.1%, you're not going to make a lot of money. So i
yeah.
i decided to go back at e-commerce, focus on that, sometime, like some years afterwards.
That's incredible having that exposure so young. I'm curious, how did you learn how to sell, how to code actually as well? How did you learn these platforms?
So I guess I guess I was just like searching things. I was always very curious, so I got my way around. I first and foremost, I try to do things like I try to learn by doing things. So I literally just open up an account and be like, well, how does this work? And then that was my initial idea, and that's how I started selling. But I think I'm pretty good at understanding like spotting gaps in the market. And I
Mhm.
figured out, well, there's a lot of people on this community back in the days that are requesting a different, like they're requesting a product. They're interested in buying this product. No one is offering it. And
Yeah.
somehow I realized, well, if I'm going to find that product and then sell it to them, I'm going to make a little bit of, like arbitrage there. So that's what I was
Yeah.
doing. I was kind of spotting these opportunities, like arbitrage opportunities, and just learning, like I just learned that way. And that's also when we fast forward to today and Sienna, I didn't know much about AI. I didn't know much about customer experience and customer service. And actually, I think that played really well to my advantage and to Sienna's advantage, because I didn't
Mhm.
come in this industry with like a preconceived notion of, oh, we should build a chatbot or we should build this or that. It was like, how do we solve the problem in the
Yeah.
most creative way, in a way that our customers are really gonna like see Sienna as something like as a game changing platform for them. So
Yeah.
that's how I do. Also, coding wise, I was spending a lot of time just like online, just finding resources that enable me to learn how to code. Later
Mhm.
on, obviously, YouTube came out, and I made things easier.
Yeah.
Then I started computer science, but I guess I learned a lot on my own, which is not the best thing to do. Like obviously, if you have mentors and if you can get like formal education, it's even better. But I didn't have that at the time.
Yeah. I'm curious then, did you end up going to school, college to study anything?
Yeah, so I actually started two degrees, a
Okay.
degree in computer science and a degree in business.
Mhm.
And I was really ambitious, and I wanted to complete both degrees at the same time. And that was my ambition, because I knew that somehow whatever I'm going to end up doing, it's going to be at the intersection between business and technology.
Yeah.
I ended up dropping out for both.
Yeah.
So that's my story. I actually I dropped first from business degree because I realized it's just like it didn't really help, didn't really bring anything new. Like it didn't really help me with networking or anything. So I
Yeah.
realized it's just a waste of time for me, being in Romania at the time. And then with computer science, I studied the whole 4 years, like the whole schedule. But
Yeah.
then because of my business took off, I didn't really have much time to really finish. And yeah, I decided, I might as well just spend my time building the business, which I guess it worked out well, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome. So at that time, what was that business? I saw there were some other ventures that you founded along the way as well.
yeah. Um, so you know, I kind of had this side gig of selling things online since I was a kid, but then it really like that was never like a legit standalone business. It was just like something that I was doing early on, and then I didn't really pay a lot of attention.
Mhm.
So I found an opportunity. The business that I was in was I was selling different. Think about it as a luxury men's apparel business. So it was a
Mhm.
Shopify powered business.
Yeah.
Um, I was selling products all over the world. So it was not just a local business, but it was a kind of global back then. This was like I started in 2014, 2015,
Mhm.
and build a fully remote team. Again, I had no idea. Like I had to just learn things by doing.
Yeah.
But it worked pretty well. It got acquired in 2018, and
Wow.
that initial capital from the acquisition allowed me to build Relevant and Cartoup, and then now Sienna. So it's all like a very nice gradual transition.
Yeah. I would love to get into the next venture that you used with that acquisition as well, which introduced you to AI, your own company as well, through newsletters. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that was actually the initial touch point with AI.
Yeah.
But it was very crude. It was very crude. It was a very crude recommender engine that we built. So think about something like Klaviyo, but at the more at the mo well, it was generating automated newsletters based on different product, based on website traffic. So it was solving the problem of not having to create newsletters manually based on trending products or products
Yeah.
that someone actually looked at. So it was doing this all automatically. It was a pretty
Wow.
cool idea, a novel idea. That business got acquired after like 10 months, something like that.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
I would love to kind of go into the introduction to Sienna then. You founded a couple brands by now, acquired. What inspired you to get into Sienna just last year, and especially in the
Yeah.
consumer experience side that really hasn't been seen before?
So, the story, it's, um, I was building Cartoon back then. I kind of I kind of touched on like customer experience and customer service by being exposed to Cartoon, but it was never like the pure, like it was never that thing that we were focusing on.
Yeah.
Going back at the point of just seeing gaps and like trying to connect dots, I started to see through this, like different customer conversations, and just like by looking at data, that like there's this trend of companies wanting to automate their customer service, which is obvious. Like
Yeah.
obviously you want to automate customer service. You don't want to have a team of 20, like 10, 20 of 100 people, where you could have a much more linear team. It's
Yeah.
just natural, right? So it's nothing new there. I kind of knew that thing
Yeah.
already. But what I realized, so what ended up happening, I started to ask myself, why, like why isn't there like a platform, like a chatbot or an AI tool or some sort of a tool that enables businesses to build different kind of conversational experiences using AI? So not these chatbots, because the one thing that I heard and I knew since like the early days, that no one really liked chatbots in the commerce space. It's like, you could use them, but they were not creating a really good experience for consumers. They were like just there,
Yeah.
people were like, engaging with them, but they were just immediately say, talk to agents. So
Yeah.
I ended up doing a 3 month stint of just talking to 100 or so merchants. So I literally started reaching out to people, and I say, well, this was one of the things that I promised myself: if I'm going to build something new, I better make sure that this is a real problem and people really, they're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
And it's not just going to be another AI startup, another failed chatbot company, which there were already probably hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So for me, two things were clear. People need this. Like they would want to outsource, they would want to automate as much as their customer service as possible. But there was a big if. Only if that experience is pleasant and it's very human-like for consumers.
Yeah.
That's something like that big if. It's something that no one has done before. Even the most sophisticated chatbot was a chatbot. Even Amazon's chatbot is just a chatbot, which
Yeah.
works based on like keywords and based on like tap, like, oh, tap this and tap that. There
Yeah.
was nothing close to like a human-like experience.
Yep.
So interestingly enough, I put together a checklist of, okay, these are some of the things that if we're going to build something like Sienna, they have like, these are the things that Sienna needs to check. And the first thing on a checklist, it has to sound like a human, and it has to pass the Turing test. So whenever you have a conversation with Sienna, it shouldn't sound like a chatbot, and it should be like very human-like. And
Yeah.
I swear to God, I had no idea how we're going to do it, but I knew that if we're going to do that thing, people are going to pay for it, and it's just going to get adoption, and people are going to want to use Sienna.
Yeah.
So this was last year in 2022, like towards like September, like summer, September.
Yep.
And funny enough, through a conversation so I ended up assembling a team of ML engineers through a friend of mine. Like they worked with large language models previously, but also I had a conversation with a friend of mine who introduced me to generative AI. So this friend of mine, he kind of like put OpenAI on my roadmap, on my like in front of me, and I was like, this is interesting, because back then it was only GPT-3 that was available. So it just came out, and it was really new. I didn't really, there was no one building, as far as I knew, in customer service using GPT. But somehow, through different iterations and testing, I realized, well, maybe there's an opportunity here to use something new, which again, we didn't even call it generative AI. It was that, let's just use this thing to create more human-like experiences for customers. And we started coding. We put together the first version, and probably it took like 4 or 5 months to put in the first version. It was very crude. It was very basic, but it did check the first checklist, which was creating human-like conversations. So we went live with the first customer towards right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's Eve on December. And it was pretty incredible when we saw this thing, like, wow, this actually works. we realized we're onto something here. We're definitely onto something. But then, you know, it really worked out well. But then we saw a number of things that need to be built out, because that product, that was very crude. There was a lot of things that were missing in the product,
For sure.
especially around guardrailing and managing the conversation in context and managing the channels. But that was the initial, like that's how we started. And it was,
Yeah.
I think we were the first company that used generative AI at runtime. So when a response was created, and it was, I think it's still pretty awesome the way the way we were able to do this with like very little. We didn't have a lot of capital to do this, and it worked.
It's incredible. If you can kind of explain to the listeners, so how did this work at the initial front? Did you guys integrate with ChatGPT, or how did you formulate these responses based off of the feedback that customers would ask to trust that this answer would be correct? I know you had to create some guideways to do so, but how did that work?
Yeah. So initially we it was there's a thunderstorm outside. So initially it was an intent recognition engine that was combined with OpenAI's technology, and that was what enabled us to create the responses. Now, there's a number of problems that we realized, but that was the initial version of it. Like super crude. It did work, but like it was not scalable from many different angles.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening between, let's say, January until now, it was really building up infrastructure to support scaling this across multiple type of conversations, multiple channels, and also doing this while being 100% hands off. Like, because initially one of the things that we're doing, we're tracking two metrics. We're tracking the automation rate. So that is how much, like, what is the lift that Sienna is bringing to customer service team? So what the percentage of tickets or conversations that Sienna manages fully resolves. And the other one is the objective success rate. So out of all the responses that Sienna is creating, how many of them are successful, meaning that they're contextual, they're relevant, and they're resolving the customer's need. So just going like marginally improving that objective success rate was incredibly hard for us, because when you're working with large language models, one of the best things that they're doing is hallucinating. So you could ask ChatGPT, like, hey, can you tell me about this, or can you tell me about that, or where is my order, or I'd like a refund. Well, ChatGPT is super easily going to tell you, sure, here's your refund, but then no one is actually providing that refund. So in our industry, in customer service / customer experience, is like eventually we need to get to a place where the objective success rate is 100%. So every time Sienna responds, it's 100% sure. Like out of 1,000 conversations, 1,000 conversations must be perfectly like following the guidelines and whatnot. That means that we're like, our job is to build infrastructure and build pipelines that enable us to get to that point. So right now we are very close, like we've surpassed 90% success rate.
Yeah.
Which was incredibly difficult to accomplish.
Sure.
Also considering the fact that Sienna, it's the only platform that automates customer interactions across all channels. So we're not just doing live chat, like a chat bot, which is sitting on your website and people are like, hey, do you ship to Canada? Sure, we do. Or hey, do you like, we actually power conversations for the first time also through comments, DMs, text messages, emails. So Sienna is the platform that powers all this. And the more channels you add, and the more you have to think about like orchestrating all these different channels, is because it becomes incredibly complex sustaining that objective success rate. So the more channels you add, the more you have to think about how do you present information across those channels. So there's all these things that we kind of have to invent, and there's things that no one else has built. So we were like, we just have to use first principle thinking and be like, okay, well, I guess this is the way we should solve this problem, because there was no other way around it. It's a totally new way of looking at customer experience, like chatbots and conversational AI, through this lens of generative AI, as opposed to the way previous legacy chatbots were doing it. And it's kind of, I'd like to use this analogy, which it might be funny, but it's almost like comparing two cars. One of them is electric and one of them is combustion engine, right? So they both cars have four wheels. They have steering wheel. They have a windshield. They have a chassis. They have like body panels and whatnot. But when you look inside, they're actually totally different. Like the entire infrastructure is different. And
Yeah.
I think this is the case with a tool like Sienna. For the end consumer, even for the end consumer, the experience is totally different when they use Sienna and they have a conversation with Sienna. They, like 99% of the time, they will not even know it's an AI, and
Yeah.
that's leaps and bounds ahead from what previously was
Yeah.
possible.
That's incredible. I'm curious then, how does the platform know a brand? Does it read through the website? Like, how does it know if a customer asks, "Where's my order?" Does it integrate through Shopify for that? If it asks something specific about something that needs to be tracked, like how does the platform know that? Does it? Yeah, can you tell us?
Yeah. So when you look inside, there's multiple layers that comprise that pretty much end up being Sienna and the ultimate, like the end experience.
Mhm.
One of them is the integrations layer. So we indeed integrate with Shopify. We integrate with different help desks. We integrate even with like Notion. Like we have, so Sienna has the capacity to bring in both structured and
Mhm.
unstructured data,
Yeah.
create a database, and then use that data to power conversations. That's one way of doing things. And then also, in addition to that, our customers are able to define custom automations, meaning like they can take like a topic, think about it as a topic, like,
Yeah.
request product about, request information about topic X, and then you can define a series of actions. And that's super easy to do through the platform, but it's extremely complex at the same time, because you can use almost like prompt engineering inside of Sienna. So you can do some pretty wicked things when you look into that. So
Yeah.
there's, in a nutshell, there's a number of ways to bring in data to Sienna, and then Sienna takes all that, like takes the data and takes the best decision based on the automation strategy that you as a company want to develop.
Yeah. Amazing. Going forward, where do you see Sienna possibilities for other expansion? I'm not sure if you guys are looking ahead for that. You're focused D2C right now. Where else could you see a possibility?
So, like this, like everything in the AI space, it's moving so incredibly fast. It's almost
Yeah,
hard to keep up with all.
for sure.
One thing that I know, or one thing that I believe in, is that in order for Sienna to become a really big company that has an impact across not just e-commerce but various industries,
Mhm.
it has to be generic. So it has to be able to withstand customer conversations across different channels, across different languages, in various numbers of like use cases and instances.
Yeah.
So I see Sienna more and more as something that, think about it almost as an AGI, but for businesses. Like you develop your own AGI, which is a little bit different from something like a foundational model like
Yeah.
ChatGPT, which essentially it's just one really massive thing, which can be served as a chat interface or as an API.
Yeah.
For us, it's about how do we recreate that experience, but while giving control to businesses, as far as what do they automate, how do they do it, what kind of data they use, what platforms they integrate with.
Yeah.
So our goal is to go as generic as possible, meaning that we don't envision something where you'd have to maintain 1,000 different chatbots and 1,000 different workflows. It's more about
Yeah.
having one platform that you can easily plug in across your channels, including voice. And it's almost like a human. You just have to tell this, the system, like, hey, do this, do that. These are the different rules that you should abide by.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the future is headed. And I think fast forward a few years from now, every company will have a chatbot or like an assistant that interfaces with consumers, be it in the B2B space or B2C space.
Yep.
And we're going to see things evolving rapidly. So we're going to see platforms like Sienna enabling voice, but not the voice automation that was possible in the past, where you have this robot like press 1 for this, like not an IVR system, not even like a basic voice automation, but more like a real human. So you would have almost human-like conversation even through voice.
Yeah.
Obviously all channels will be there. So like when I look forward, when I look just like 1 or 2 years ahead, I see Sienna really providing this foundational platform, like foundational way for companies to launch automations across all their channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there, even when you think about what does automation mean, because
For
automation
sure.
is not just the fact that Sienna or a platform responds to the customer. It's also
For sure.
how do you understand what else needs to be automated, like what are the, like there's a framework that we follow, so there's many different things that get into that, but for now, just having this generalized approach to AI, it's on our roadmap.
Of course. So I'd like to conclude each episode with this. If you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
I would say it depends who the entrepreneur is, but
For sure.
um, um, well, it's a thunderstorm inside. I would say, you know, if you're just starting out, it's really important to make sure people would actually need whatever you're building.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, we tend to over fall in love with whatever we're building, and we believe people are just going to pay for it. When in fact, that might not be the case. So as with Sienna, like I really wanted to go deep in understanding if this is a real need or is just something that I believe is true. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes what you believe is true and what the market believes is true, they're totally different things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a shame where you spend maybe months or even years building something that ultimately no one needs. So
Mm.
I would say, make sure that people really need, and it's like a real pain point, whatever you're trying to solve.
Yep, for sure. Amazing. Well, Andre, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Sienna at sienna.cx.